Well. Good afternoon, West Ham fans. Let's talk about the academy, shall we? Yes, everybody, Russ and the West Ham Network. Hope you are all safe and well. If you're new around here, thanks for joining us. What we tend to do every week on a Monday is we do the Academy Show. We give you the latest news, reviews, and opinions from the under 18s and 21s because it's a massive part of the club and there's not enough spotlight on it, in my opinion. So we've been doing it for the last half a dozen weeks or so. People are really enjoying it, so we keep going. And it's really interesting. Obviously, I sort of work for them as well in terms of the DJ announcing for the home games. So, I've got a lot more. I'm watching a lot more academy football, that's for sure. And so giving you my opinions and my views on the academy. And also any latest news. There's always something happening with the academy. That is for sure. So let's crack into it. As always, we do it in quite a systemic way. Is that the right way? I don't know if that's the right word. But we'll start with right. Okay, the first bit is any news. Any interesting news that's happened in the last week about the academy. Then we go about the loan signings, the loan spells in terms of those academy players out on loan. We did the first team at Hammers Headlines at lunchtime. And then lastly, we then do sort of match reports about the last few games. There's been a few games happening for the 18s and the 21s. So let's crack on like Donkey Kong, shall we? Let's start with news. We're going to start with this gentleman, Flavor Fawani. He is an academy player. He's in the under 18 squad. And I don't remember last week, I spoke about how Tyron Ekpata was listed on QPR's development squad for their senior cup game against Dartford, I think it was. In essence, sort of going on trial at QPR. Flavor's done the same thing this week. Flavors was on trial at QPR, as confirmed by QPR's academy Twitter accounts on last week. He's obviously under a contract at West Ham until the end of the season. His contract comes to the end or in June, as tends to happen with a lot of the academy players. It gets renewed in the summer or not, and there's the release list. So obviously he's looking at options, and in a similar way he turned out for QPR last week, and then obviously subsequently then played for our under 18s this weekend in the same thing to Tyrone did. I really like Flavor. He's really raw, he's really exciting, and it'll be a shame, if we don't renew his contract. I think we would do, because I think he's a very exciting, dynamic player, and I think he would bring something, particularly, currently in the 18s. Obviously, eventually he'll be transitioning into the under 21s, and I think he'd be a really exciting, a bit like Armstrong Ockerflex, but he's smaller, more diminutive, and he's a lot more wiry, a lot more sort of like just seems really hard to be pushed off the ball, and he's very, very tricky, very tricky player. Scored a couple of goals to the under 18s at the weekend, but we'll talk about it in a minute. But interesting to see that he's sort of looking at his options as well, which is fair enough, and that is the world of academy football, unfortunately. Elsewhere, let's talk about loan signings. Let's start with Callum Marshall. Obviously, we've got half a dozen players or so academy players out on loan. As I said, I spoke at the likes of Tilo Kehrer, Ben Rama, Flynn Downs and whatnot in the Hammers Headlines, but this is just concentrating on the academy players. So Callum Marshall got some more minutes for West Brom. He was on used substitute last week. This week, he came on the 64th minute as West Brom lost 2-0 to Southampton. Unfortunately, Flynn Downs did not play for Southampton. He sustained an injury last week, quite early on in the game last week, and he's still recovering from that. But he replaced Swift, who was actually sort of operating in the 10 role at West Brom. So interesting to see coming on and playing that in position. And ironically, Marshall was substituted a minute before former West Ham Academy graduate Greg Garner came on for the Baggies as well. So good to see Callum get a good almost half an hour under his belt in a relatively tight game. I mean, Southampton are second, I think, and then West Brom are fifth. So to get some minutes there was good for him, and hopefully that can continue into the rest of the season. Freddy Potts, he played the first 79 minutes for Wickham as they drew 0-0 at home with Oxford United. Wickham remained 15th. Freddie's been playing a lot of football for them in the central midfield positions, but he was substituted after 79 minutes. Once again, Gideon Kidoa wasn't in the matchday squad. I wonder whether he has picked up an injury because he hasn't featured at all since sign. I think he was an unused substitute the first game, and then from then on he hasn't featured at all. So I wonder if there's an injury there because he's not even on the bench, which is not what we'd want in a loan signing, particularly when our under-21s are probably very light in a forward position, in all honesty, at the moment. So, yeah, it's a bit disappointing. But if he's got an injury, fair enough. You can't really help that. Elsewhere, let's talk about Kian Forson. Kian Forson played the full 90 minutes as... Where's my script gone? It's disappeared. Anyway, Kian Forson played the full 90 minutes as Dagenham Redbridge drew 1-1 at York City. The Dagenham's now move up to 11th in the National League. Have I got Dan Chester's on here as well? Where's Dan Chester's gone? Dan Chesters. There we go. Dan Chesters. He was an unused substitute for Salford City as they won 5-3 at Barrow at home at Barrow in League Two. Salford are now still 19th in League Two, and it was back to another clean sheet for Christian Hegge, the man who can't stop saving goals. He gets a clean sheet as Den Bosch drew 0-0 at home with Young AZ, basically AZ Alkmaar's sort of B team, in the Netherlands second division. He kept 3 consecutive clean sheets before last weekend when they lost 3-0 to Den Haag, I think it was. But he's back with another clean sheet. Den Bosch are still 18th in the league, all on the same points as 19th and 20th. It's quite close down the bottom of the second division in Holland. Right, let's talk about games. There's been a few games. We'll start with let's start with the under-21s. It was, again, last week was like a mixed bag with the under-18s doing well and the under-21s not doing so well. This week it's a complete reversal, I think, to be fair. The under-21s played top of the league Spurs, who had themselves a perfect start to the Premier League 2, having won every game so far this year. And West Ham did it. It's happened again. It happened again. We ruined it. Albeit a 1-1 draw at Spurs' training ground on Saturday. It ended their perfect season. And that was thanks to a absolutely lovely goal from Sean Moore, who's absolutely on fire. The former Cliftonville teenager who we signed last summer. He's had a real vein of form the last couple of games. He scored, I think, like 3 and 4 or something ridiculous like that at the moment, which is, for his position, quite impressive. The current under 19 Republic of Ireland international scored. He found that at the hour, and that's his third goal, as I said, in 4 games. Spurs were good. I think Spurs were good value for their equaliser. Iago Santiago scored 10 minutes later. And yeah, point apiece was probably a fair result between the top 2 in the PL2 South. Having won their first 11 games of the season, Spurs still remain top. West Ham are second, and we trail the leaders by 4 points. I think we could have won the game. Levi Lang scooped over the bar from very close range. Julie Robinson's had a good chance. Patrick Kelly had a decent chance. Lewis Orford, who, happy birthday, Lewis, you turned 18 yesterday. Well done. All had shots saved as they sort of kept on going. As I said, I think we could have easily been the first team to beat Spurs this season. Again, later on, Cam Swire, George Earthy just couldn't find the net. We particularly on the counter attack, because they were really pushing at the end. I mean, we played, I'm sure you're aware, we play a back 3 in the 18s and 21s. This week was Lang, Louisau, and Kalen Casey. Michael Forbes, I think, he's been missed the last couple of games. I think he's injured, so he's a real presence in that centre half position. Michael is a fantastic leader. Next up for them, for the under-21s, is the quarterfinals of the Premier League Invitational Cup against Brighton and Hove Albion on Friday at Rush Green. In terms of the under-18s, they suffered 2 defeats this week. Well, the week just gone, the week that was. Firstly, they fell to their West London rivals Chelsea 3-2 in a really hard-fought game on Tuesday. They went toe-to-toe with them, and we could have got a point later on. I think, Edri Mayers, my favourite player, Edris Golombekis, they just couldn't convert at the end. Some really, particularly in stoppage time, Dan Riggs put some great crosses in, but they just couldn't get on the end of it. A draw would have been a fair result, I think, to be honest. And there was some good goals. Josh Ajala found the net yet again when he poked home against his former club. What else? Ryan Ubede, he scored a fantastic volley to make it 2-2. Yeah, absolutely fantastic. If you can watch it anyway, I think it's on YouTube. I think it's brilliant goal. And then it just didn't. We just couldn't get that last goal. And then after that defeat, we then played West Brom on Saturday at Rush Green and lost 5-2. West Brom scored within the first 60 seconds, which is quite crazy. And then Flavor from Wami, who I spoke about before, he became the main catalyst, scored the equaliser, and then took the lead shortly after. Some couple of really good goals there, but unfortunately, then West Brom started to take control and eventually ran 5-2 winners on the day with their striker Sul. He scored a hat-trick, I believe. Next up for the under-18s, they're in action against Little Southampton at Little Heath on Saturday. 11:30 kickoff. But despite those two defeats, West Ham are still top of the under-18s Premier League South, joint on points with second place Spurs. But we've got a game in hand. So that's all good. And obviously Southampton, who a very good side Southampton are in terms of their academy. It's not going to be an easy game, but they're sort of towards the bottom of the PL2 South. So you imagine we should get a win there, which will help cement our first place spots. And also, as I said, happy birthday to Lewis, 18 yesterday. So obviously he's been featured in a few match day squads for the first team. Hasn't got any minutes so far in the Premier League for us, but a really good player, and obviously happy birthday to him. And that's it. That's it today. We'll have a load more to talk about next week for sure. With more games, there'll be some more news. There's always news when it comes to the academy, that's for sure. And if you like what we do, don't forget to give it a comment, like, share. It's not always about the first team. It's not always, there's a whole system behind it, and the 18s and 21s and the 16s as well. But we sort of tend to just look at the 18s and 21s, and what we'll start doing is a few more profile pieces on some of the players as well. I want to talk more about Jacob Knightbridge, the under-21 goalkeeper, because he's a fantastic goalkeeper, and I really, really think he's got a real good future in the game. There's so many good players there. But until then, take care, stay safe, stay warm, stay humble, keep the faith, and come on, you bloody Irons. Irons!